Anti-Mage and Isekai LitRPG Adventure, Ends of Magic Book 1, audiobook by Kevin Chapter 23, Leaving a Legacy. The door closed behind them, and Nathan appraised Egal. She was no longer wearing the robes of a Giant's Rest mage, instead dressed in a fine but plain tunic of green and white. It reminded Nathan of the group of scribes who'd started running the city. He raised an eyebrow at the outfit. "Are you working for Mila now?" Egal gestured for him to take the lead. She followed him as he started winding his way out of the building. "Yes. Apart from the adventurers, there are no mages left in Housemint, not even the meanest finger of the Giant's will. If the adventurers leave, there will be nobody to heal the sick or recharge the enchantments that do not charge themselves. Mila wants me to start training new mages." Wow, she'd be taking on a heavy burden there. He looked back at Egal, finding that her expression was troubled. "Do you think you can?" she exhaled heavily. "By the Giant, I don't know. I've only taught some low-tier students the first insights of the academy before. To train people as full mages, I never even graduated. I don't know the full story, but one thing is clear to me." Nathan met her eyes, his tone serious. "You're a skilled mage. I've felt your magic, and you're better than many graduated mages of Giant's Rest I've met. If by met you mean killed." He considered for a moment before continuing. "You're not a mage of Giant's Rest. You shouldn't try to be one. You're a mage of Housemint, and you get to decide what that means. Don't teach the same lessons you learned in the Ascendant Academy. You don't have the same students, and you don't want the same results. Make the school you wish you had gone to." She didn't respond, so Nathan kept talking. "You should talk to Gale Shullet, the Crowfolk mage who was at the meeting. She leads the Seven Fools, but she also runs the Tower of Trickery, which trains most of the mages of Gemor. I don't know if she'd share any magical insights, but she might share some insights on how to teach. As if those are less powerful. I have a dream of getting a third class focused on teaching, when Giant's Rest is destroyed." Egal was breathing quickly, seemingly overwhelmed by the weight of the task in front of her. Nathan turned around, reaching out for her shoulders before thinking better of the motion and withdrawing his hands. "Start small. You don't need to challenge the Ascendant Academy by yourself. You need to train a dozen students to cast Curing and teach them to use their magic responsibly. That would be a win." He eyed her, gratified to see her taking slower and deeper breaths. "Is that something you want to do?" The ex-slave nodded slowly, then looked up. "Yes, fingers of a fist, I can do that. I'll teach their insights to those they once held as slaves." Leadership 5 achieved. Nathan smiled, then was struck by a sudden thought. "I wonder if she can get a second class for teaching. Feline didn't swear me not to share that insight. She just told me that learning it could jeopardize somebody's path. But I don't think Egal wants to level as a mage of Giant's Rest or a nail any longer." He held her gaze. "I'm going to share the insight for a second class now, because I think you can use it. Can you cast spells to block sound?" Her eyes bugged out, and she stuttered a few times before successfully casting the spell around them. She still didn't step very close to him, even if it would have made the magic easier. Muffled Nathan kept his aura close to avoid disturbing the magic enshrouding them. "I don't know if this will work for you, and it carries the risk of destabilizing your current class. It might mess up your future class developments, and I want to emphasize that there's no guarantee that it will work. Do you still want to learn this insight?" Egal grimaced and gave the question a few seconds of thought before responding. "Yes, my class was in preparation to be a nail. I will use those lessons to survive, but I won't be a knife in the dark." Okay, this might work, it might not. Nathan cast back in his memory to remember how Feline had explained this insight to him. "What is your purpose? Why did you follow the path of a nail?" Her eyes darkened, and she snorted with dark humor. "To keep myself safe and hidden, though that truth is shattered. I was the daughter of a slave artisan and a scribe, chosen because I was bright and learned easily. I had no backers, no protection in the academy. I hid from those who could squash me, especially Jaxus. I beat him in an early lesson and he always raised his hand against mine after that. The nails found me and they offered protection if I joined them. I liked their insights and I was good at them. I thought I was weaving the same colors as the professors who recruited me. She shook her head bitterly. Then Exia tightened her fist and I was made Jaxus's slave. Nathan tilted his head. Do you still follow that path? To use magic to keep yourself hidden and safe? Egol nodded sharply. Yes, if Housemit falls, I will escape the city and flee to Gemor or Litcliffe. But you also want to teach the people of Housemit magic, right? Nathan questioned. Her nod was a little slower this time. Yes, I will spread the insights hoarded by Giant's Rest, especially those of the nails. She seemed amused by that last part. Nathan considered for a moment. Yeah, I think you can do this. The way to have a second class is to have two paths, which is to have two purposes. You need to genuinely follow both, and they cannot overlap too much. Your second class also can't be similar to one you were offered at level 9 on your first class selection. Egol was taking all of this in, clearly thinking at a mile a minute and starting to get excited. But Nathan wasn't done. Then you need a deed that's significant enough it boosts you up to level 9 all at once. I don't know what that would look like for a teaching class. Maybe helping a dozen kids unlock the mana-shaping talent in a single lesson. You might need to drop a utility skill and pick up one focused on teaching to accomplish that. You should ask Gale and Sudriel. If you tell her you're starting a school for mages in Housemit, she should make time for you. He eyed her furrowed brow. Does all of that make sense? High-tier lecturing 2 achieved. Yes, it does. She nodded rapidly, eyes distant. I'm going to try. I'll talk to Gale and Sudriel. I need the palms of Mila and Cameron for this. Is the insight of the second-class mine to share? Nathan's attention was drawn away from Egol as a thin middle-aged man came around the corner looking peeved. His eyes locked onto them, saying something that they couldn't hear. Egol hastily dispelled the muffle spell. Waiting. What in the giant's name is the delay? Egol shrunk back, but Nathan stepped forward. Sorry, just having an important chat, let's go. As they walked, Nathan turned back to Egol, answering her final question vaguely. Just be careful with it. I think if the insight doesn't work, then it might hurt somebody's path irreparably. Let me know if you need more help. The man frowned at Nathan. What occurs? Egol stepped between them, leading the way forward at a fast pace. Nothing. I'll need to talk to you about this later. Nathan, this is Cameron. He's the person who trains new scribes. The pinch-faced man looked between Nathan and Egol suspiciously as they walked, then sighed. This is a time of ascension. I hope your conversation was worth hundreds of slaves suffering their bondage that much longer. You know, I think it was. Housemit needs power, not just freedom. Nathan had an audience as he walked down the line of sickly laborers and broke their collars. It seemed that every adventurer had heard Nathan was going to do this, and wanted to see his anti-magic in action. After all, this is usually something that takes a few hours of work from an enchanter skilled at curse-breaking. It's worthwhile to save a life, but not feasible to do across an entire city. Not to mention impossible if being captured triggers the failsafe and kills the victim. At least these enchantments weren't as paranoid as some, since Giant's Rest didn't value their farmers or miners very much. Nearly every single one of them needed healing from some untreated injury or chronic malnutrition, and several adventurer mages were working ahead of Nathan, curing some of the most egregious ailments. But all eyes were on him as he reached out and snapped the next collar, unweaving the magic beneath it with a touch before tearing the crude metal from the man's neck. Several adventurer mages were trying to surreptitiously see what he was doing, and Nathan waved them closer. I don't think you can replicate this, but you're free to watch what I'm doing. If you can get an insight out of this, you're welcome to it. They stepped closer and watched from feet away as he broke the next few collars, each of the newly freed laborers quickly taken aside by the now practiced volunteers. Nathan thought it was likely that a few of them had taken classes or skills to help comfort and reassure others. Sort of a proto-therapist, probably something that housemate needs. I wonder if I should try to help. I don't really know anything about therapy, just a bit of popular psychology stuff. That would probably hurt more than it helps. It's very much not designed for circumstances like this. One of the mages watching was Argon from Khazar's team. He watched Nathan break a few more of the enchantments and grimaced. Maw from the deep. The magic just unwinds itself and is drawn away. There's no insight to be had here, just a blasphemously powerful talent. He walked away, sharing a few words with Khazar before they both left. But more mages stuck around, wanting to try and wring every possible bit of information out of what he was doing. Dragon's breath, the magic just dissolves, Ian said excitedly, the illusionist from the Oath of Chilin bouncing on the balls of his feet. Can you describe what you're doing? I think this has moved on from people trying to figure out how to free people from mind magic to trying to figure out how my anti-magic works. Not sure I'm comfortable with that. Nathan shrugged, moving on to the next collared man. Using my talent. I don't think I can replicate the necessary conditions to pass it on, sorry to say. Can you break this spell? Ian cast a diffuse orb of light, made of various layers of light and dream mana. After a quick glance at the spell, Nathan shook his head. Nope. If you have questions about breaking mind magic, I'll answer. But I'm not going to poke a spell designed to tease out how my talent works. He turned away from Ian towards the remaining slaves, working through them quickly. Give an inch, they'll try to take a mile. Most of the other mages gave up quickly, but Ian tried to tempt Nathan a few more times. By the blood we shed, will you do me this favor? I only wish insight into my own spell work. I don't believe you. Sorry, Ian, I'd rather not. Thanks for your help. You do good illusions. I hope to work with you again someday. Nathan sped through the rest of the farmers, releasing them to the care of the citizens of Housemate as he ignored Ian until the man huffed and walked off. After he was done, Cameron approached Nathan, making a note on a clipboard-like object before putting it in his armpit to press his hands together in a giant's rest salute. Praise the Gia, thank you. That is every slave of Housemate freed. The city is born anew. The man tilted his head back, looking skyward and trying to pretend there weren't tears in his eyes. If your hands are idle, Lilus has a list of magical locks to be broken and enchantments we need destroyed. The ascetic scribe wiped at his eyes surreptitiously, looking over at the group of work-worn men and women sprawled in Xia's garden, the volunteers bustling around to be sure everybody was comfortable and had help adapting to their sudden freedom. Nathan felt warmth blossom in his chest at the display of emotion from the man. Maybe later. I'm headed out on patrol soon, and I've still got some people to talk to and preparations to make. She's in the mansion. Cameron nodded, saluted again, and turned to walk past the two Housemate elites guarding the door and back into the mansion that was quickly becoming the seat of government of the newly liberated city. A voice hissed from the side. Nathan. His head snapped around and he saw a hooded figure standing in a shadow underneath a tree. Green eyes shone underneath the hood before one of them flickered pink. Feline, in hiding from Brox, of course. He walked over, spending some focus on noticeability to be more inconspicuous. With the skill active, he felt the instant he entered Feline's zone of influence. All attention on him suddenly vanished. He stopped and stepped back across the transition, examining what his skill was telling him. It's like a blind spot. I'm just edited out of their perception as soon as I get close to her. That's a powerful skill. I wonder how it works in combat. Mid-tier noticeability 7 achieved. He stepped up to Feline and she smirked at him. Have you divined more of my secrets? He mirrored her smile. Not too many, but I will never underestimate being able to blend in amongst your enemies. We would never have won this victory without your skills. Feline gave an affirming grunt and her expression grew more serious. She studied him, saying nothing. Nathan examined her posture, her expression, and came to an obvious conclusion. "You're leaving. You're going to Giant's Rest and you want me to come with you." She gave a deep sigh. If the prophecy had not been spoken, if the questers were not here, then we could avert the coming smoke and blood. Together we could go to Giant's Rest and strike every target. If you killed the host of a party and escaped uncaught, every mage would cower within their homes, and the archmages would hurl abuse and blame at each other for weeks. But that is not the path before us. Feline looked down, her face suddenly lined with stress. By the heavy hand of prophecy, this battle will be fought, and I know you will not abandon your friends. You do not have the skills to blend into the Giant's Rest army. Your weight in this fight is too high for a risky infiltration. She looked up, bright green eyes boring into his. I will go to Giant's Rest to follow my path. I will give warning when the army marches. Sudriel will hear it. I will march in their ranks, look for a pink mask. He nodded solemnly. Okay. This felt different than any of his other conversations with Feline. Normally she was sly, joking, and flirtatious. Now she seemed serious and tense. Be safe. The corner of her mouth turned up in a smirk. We have stared this giant in the eye and torn a city from its grasp. Bait the castle bear, but do not become its meal. The smile extended across her face. If we both survive the upcoming conflagration, then we move on Giant's Rest. She held up her hand for Nathan to grab. If this army is broken, then there is an opening. We can cast down the Ending's damned empire. Nathan reached forward and grasped her offered hand, looking into her eyes. That's worth a heavy cost, but not every cost. I will do a lot to see Giant's Rest destroyed, but there are lines I won't cross. If she asks me to nuke the city, I'm finding another way. If Feline noticed any sign of his internal qualification, she didn't react, squeezing his hand for a moment before letting go and stepping back. The Guardians have warned you of Brox. I add my weight to their word. Keep my name from his ears. He thinks me dead, and I would have that remain true. Nathan couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Everybody seems to have history with him, but nobody will tell me what it is. What happened? The assassin shook her head sadly. Waking giants is what happened. Brox wished to challenge a Kali's conclave dungeon. The Guardians were with him. They say he woke the horrors within. We call it the Night of Living Light, and hundreds died. That included Cosful, Stanel's wife, and Arl and Sarah's mother. She was with him on the walls. No wonder he's so upset about having Brox around. But given that it hasn't been mentioned, I probably shouldn't bring it up. Nathan frowned. Did the dungeon need to go? She hesitated, then nodded. It is now the town of Grasmere. Nathan took a second to recall his geography. Grasmere was a village to the southwest of Gemor. It lay on the route to 3 more villages. Those villages had probably all been established after the dungeon fell, so it wasn't worthless. Maybe Brox messed up, or maybe it was going to happen anyway and Brox was simply the one to set it off. But given that everybody has warned me about him, I'm definitely going to veer on the side of caution. He blinked and turned back to Feline. Were you there? Is that why he thinks you're dead? No, she said bitterly. Later he asked me to deliver him to Giant's Rest, that he might work to undermine their empire. She shook her head sadly. He is not an assassin. He is a liability. Joy. Nathan's response dripped with sarcasm. Any advice? You have true aim to ask me. She hesitated, tapping her lip with a finger. It is a narrow path. If he becomes bored, he will seek out challenges without regard for their consequence. You must engage with him, entertain him, but without being impressed by him. All he meets are blinded by the light of his deeds. He seeks true companions, even if he says otherwise. Her smile turned wry. Hear me, but you do not wish to become the challenge he seeks. He might try to fight, seduce, or recruit you. None will leave you free of regret. Good to know. I know he's already interested in me. I hope he can take no for an answer if it comes to it. I'll go as luck ride with you, Feline said, then faded from view. Chapter 24. A party ends. Nathan watched Phelan leave. She slipped out of the heart of Housemate like a ghost, without a single person acknowledging her presence. It wasn't a matter of rudeness, just that her stealth skills were so advanced that nobody could see her. But she can't sneak past enchantments. She has to exploit the human element for that. It was a struggle to keep track of her, even with multiple skills boosting his perception and resistance to mental effects. Nathan's notice skill was capped out at high tier, and he didn't have an insight to develop it further. He'd need to think about that and watch out for the appropriate circumstances. Nathan walked back towards the room where he'd left the heirs, keeping an eye out for Brox. He didn't want to run into the quester without warning. Everybody said that he needed to be careful of the man. Doing that for days on end sounds exhausting. It almost seems like I should just treat him like a senior colleague with a short temper or something, but his temper doesn't seem like the problem. It's him getting bored. No questers ambushed Nathan on the way back to the room, and he gently knocked on the door. The spell holding it shut frayed at his touch, and when Dallo tried to open the door with his magic, it only cracked open. The white-haired man got to his feet, grumbling. "Hear me, that's blasphemously annoying. Spells should stay put." Nathan smirked as the older man recast the spell to seal the room. Dallo glowered at the expression before sitting back down. "No wonder Giant's Rest hates you. Magic is their worth indeed. I expect many of the mages you kill just stare with horror as their spells unravel." "A few of them, yeah." Nathan remembered the mage on top of the walls who'd watched motionless as Nathan climbed up towards him, shedding spells like water. But not all of them. That old artisan mage decided to do as much damage as he could before I got to him. Kachai raised a glass to Nathan, recalling his own experience with the man who'd taken impromptu command of the Giant's Rest forces in the main square. "My thanks." His spell carried a weight I could not hold for long. Nathan nodded in response before sweeping his gaze around the room. Everybody was at least a few drinks in, and it looked like they'd gotten more food from the kitchens. It seemed like they were all trying to enjoy quality time together. As if on cue, Kia slid another glass of umna towards Nathan and waved him to a seat. He picked it up and sat, flopping into the comfortable chair and closing his eyes with a groan. But the moment of relaxation was short-lived because he could literally feel eyes upon him with his new skill. He looked around to see Cullel and Stella studying him with identical inquisitive expressions. "Do you want something?" he asked. "Stella has mentioned interference." Cullel let the word trail off. "I would hear of this concept from the master of the mountain." Dallo scoffed. "Please, he's the master of a hillock at best." Arl and Sarah both chuckled quietly, and Nathan just rolled his eyes and took another sip, confident he didn't need to respond to the jibe. "It's so nice to feel comfortable in this group. I don't need to worry about my standing here." Stainel held up his hands placatingly. "Let's just relax for a bit. The guildmistress said their tally of deeds deserves a time of relaxation, and it's been a busy day." "Not for us," Kia said. "We've been drinking for hours. It's a divine blessing that my healing can cure drunkenness, and that Nathan has his own methods. We are on duty but not on watch. Let's drink enough to kill a siege boar." Stella elbowed her mother, who sighed heavily. "Very well. I will ask to learn the secrets of the universe later." Nathan didn't wake up the next morning with a hangover, though he very much should have. How much alcohol do they have in those dimensional bags? One of the advantages to being a powerful adventurer, I guess. You get to carry your whole liquor cabinet with you. He was back in their rooms with the heirs sleeping around him. It wasn't too late, but Nathan needed to pee. He slipped out and once more found a pair of Housemate elites standing outside the door. One of them was Turbang, who raised an eyebrow at Nathan. "Have a fun night," Nathan nodded, yawning. "Yep. How are you folks doing? Sorry for losing you yesterday." The quester. Turbang's expression lifted. "What a dragon." "He sparred with us yesterday and set a dozen of us on our asses. He's getting along well with Oled, though I hear you're going on patrol with the man tomorrow. Yup, should be interesting. I think you folks can finally go back to more important things. I shouldn't need a guard in the wild. Nathan took a few steps down the hall, trying to disengage so he could get to the bathroom. Turbang sighed dreamily. Not with Brock's Thastus weaving the same color. I hope it's not a problem that the elites are starting to worship Brock's. I mostly worry that he'll get them all killed. But that's why we're taking him on patrol. The heirs won't fall sway to his bullshit. Though I worry about Stella since she's the only one without a mental resistance skill. I think some of her mental techniques are supposed to develop to do that, but they haven't yet. Resolving to bring that issue up later, Nathan cast back through his memory of last night. He smiled. It had been a good time. They'd ended up talking about magic after all, with some amount of Nathan complaining about how bullshit magic was, while Dalo and Cullel responding that anti-magic was the real stalker shit. They'd chatted about Earth a fair amount, but not in specifics. He hadn't talked about the quantum nature of light very much. Instead, he'd found himself describing the history and mythology of his home. Much of it had been things that the heirs had heard before, and they'd prompted Nathan on the topics they thought their parents would find the most interesting. They loved the few Japanese myths I mentioned, especially Cullel, for a reason that couldn't possibly relate to the Kitsune. The night had ended on more of a downer, as the Guardians told more of their adventuring stories. They described the events with Brock's in very vague strokes, clarifying even less than Feline had. Nathan returned from his business to find Netta knocking on the door, the Null's dark orange skin standing out against the blue of her mage robes. "What occurs?" Nathan asked as he walked up. She turned to him, jumping slightly. "Oh, Nathan, Sudriel asked me to fetch the heirs. She wants to brief you for your patrol. Brox will be there since he's going with you." "Right, thanks. I'll get my team moving. How long do we have?" The short woman shrugged. "The guildmistress is busy, but it's probably more dependent on Brox than you. He's not filled with patience." Nathan snorted. "Thanks, Netta." He stopped before he opened the door, looking at her seriously. "I'm sorry about Delric." She gave him a sad smile. "When we were coming to Housemate, he said your flame was worth following." She gestured around at Ixia's mansion and the city beyond. "He was right. Even with what happened, I am free of regret. More people dead because of my plans. Nothing I can do about it but honor them and what they died for." Nathan returned the smile. "We'll be out in a few minutes." He entered the room to find the heirs in various states of readiness. He clapped his hands together loudly. "Rise and shine, time to get briefed on our patrol. At least it's not a patrol through Old Gemor. Those were boring, sprinkled with the occasional ambush," Stella groused as she pulled on her socks. Arl groaned. "Now this patrol is marked by a prophecy of death." "I think we are beyond prophecy's hold," Kache said in a droll tone. "With a quester along, this patrol will have its share of smoke and blood no matter our desires. Let's at least find out the route." Sarah had just finished putting on her gear and stepped up next to Nathan. "How are you doing? We drank a lot and Kia's healing can't touch you." Nathan tapped his head. "I think my talent is better than her healing. I was exactly as drunk as I wanted to be the entire night." She chuckled as they watched the other heirs finish their preparations. Once everyone was ready, Kache gestured towards the door. "Let's go. The quester will not appreciate waiting." Hold on, where's my staff?" Stella looked around wildly, sticking her hands into various pockets before relaxing. "Oh, there it is." She pulled out the long and knotted wooden stick, deeply carved with runes and inlaid with glowing gems. Nathan studied the clearly magical implement. There was definitely magic in it, but it didn't feel like a coherent structure. "What does that do? I haven't seen you use it very much." Stella held up the object in question. "It's mostly a decoy. A lot of mages use casting foci like staves and wands. I don't, but it's enchanted to look as powerful as possible while being fairly cheap. It has some amount of mana storage and will block a blow. Right, and she's got that talent that adds the mana storage of anything she's carrying to her own pool. The heirs walked out of the room, where Netta and the two elites fell in behind them. Stella greeted Netta warmly, and the two quickly fell into conversation, talking about magic as they walked to the guildmistress's new office tucked away in the corner of the enormous building. Sudriel had set up shop in one of the old administrative sections of Ixia's manor. While it was smaller than her old office, the effect of entering her domain was much the same. Her nulled secretary, Siltal, wasn't present, but the elderly human woman still dominated the room. She was currently giving orders to an adventuring team Nathan recognized, the Blades of Steel. They were a team that had relieved the heirs out at Bridgeguard far to the west, and were composed of 4 gruff old human veterans as well as a young foxfolk mage named Sunny. The rest of her team seemed to dote on the woman like she had 4 aunts and uncles. That's all. Scout it out, nothing more, Sudriel said. The Giant's Rest maps have too many endings damned dungeons for me to send anybody that way until we have reports. We need information, not clear dungeons. Armin, the leader of the team, nodded, then clapped a hand to his breast. As your flame calls. The Blades of Steel filed past the heirs, trading respectful nods. Netta followed them out, exchanging a few words with Sunny. The two elites stayed in the central office space. The door swung closed behind them of its own accord, and Sudriel sighed and leaned forward to make a mark on a checklist. At least Giant's Rest has paper, though I'm sure I would prefer not to learn its source. Another weight to hold against them, she gestured around the room. This used to be Miela's, where she handled her duties under Ixia. I asked if I could use it, and she told me that it would welcome my hand. She said she would never enter this room again. The guildmistress pulled out a map. We'll get this started since I have no idea if Brox will come. Questers are beyond my authority. She tapped the large parchment, which showed the mountains between Halsmet and Giant's Rest. The focus of the map was a creatively named mountain road, which connected the two cities together, snaking through low-lying valleys. This road is too obvious, it will be watched, but I do not expect any serious Giant's Rest scouts to use it. The army will no doubt march upon it when the time comes. Her finger moved north, tapping another pass. This is Fireface Pass. It's named for a dungeon set into the mountain on the side closer to Halsmet. It's where both Phaline and I judge the most powerful Giant's Rest advance team will approach. Nathan looked over the map and frowned, trying to interpret the markings. The dungeon is a fortress of the face. Any others nearby? No other dungeons nearby, but it's a big one, attuned to fire mana. But you shouldn't need to approach it, and the only note I have is that the inhabitants are passive. Sudriel grabbed an index card and waved it with annoyance. The Giant's Rest approach to dungeons is downright blasphemous. How much of our mission is to calm the quester? Kachai's question was quiet but serious. Sudriel fixed him with a steady gaze. Only some. This mission is important. A force of nails, or any other mages, could harass our preparations, slay fighters we cannot lose, and grant Giant's Rest invaluable knowledge. Kala Dha Drex is the archmage of the nails, and she will try to get saboteurs behind us even without orders to do so. We are dispatching other teams to the other passes, but you are the ones most likely to meet the foe. I worry that the quester will accompany them. If that is true, Brox will help you fight. He's immune to mental magic and has fought Giant's Rest before. He's a more powerful fighter than anybody in Gemor. They studied the map for a bit. Sarah traced her finger along the pass towards Giant's Rest. How far should we go? Sudriel shrugged. We do not know the terrain, so this question is in your hands. Your mission is to prevent Giant's Rest from sending scouts or saboteurs through the pass before the battle, wherever you decide is best. Can't they just teleport past it? Nathan asked. Yes, but few mages know teleport, and we will be watching. I would trade a grand insight for Giant's Rest to send such powerful mages ahead unsupported, especially when we have the housemate detection enchantments and so many elite adventurers ready to respond. Khazar could kill them from the city walls. Should we attack? Stella pointed at the western edge of Giant's Rest. Harass them, cause them to shape their eyes towards us instead of housemate. We'll be able to fight with Brock's present. At his name, the quester burst through the door, golden locks flowing with motion as he strode into the room. He responded to Stella's question. I like your desire, young Caxow. He waggled a finger at her. But that is not our mission. Badud awaits, and I would not fight him with an army at his back. Nathan could feel the pull of Brock's charisma, but his new skill insulated him from the effect. Kachai was similarly unperturbed, though Sarah and Arl were grimacing with effort. But Stella nodded along agreeably, eyes sparkling as she gazed at the quester. O-Number Brox turned to Sudriel, beaming and throwing his arms wide. This city will be safer than a vault of solace. By Ada's I declare no scouts will pierce our shroud. The guildmistress smiled grimly at him. Of that I have no doubt. This is the pass you need to guard. She traced the pass, then tapped the marking for the dungeon. This is a dungeon, but there's no need to clear it. We don't need the complication of an awakened dungeon atop a Giant's Rest army. The quester raised a sculpted blonde eyebrow. What kind? It's a fortress of the face, fire-themed, Stella said happily, eager to answer Brox's question. Yes. The guildmistress shot warning looks around at the heirs. A large and powerful one. Brox pursed his lips, giving a faint nod. Ah, fortresses of the face, those are always interesting. I prefer ice to fire, but Algoa is a god of luck, not choice. What about lightning? I'm great at lightning, Stella offered. The quester turned to fully examine her, his face registering faint surprise. Truth verified, Stella nodded frantically and held out a hand where sparks danced between her fingers. Nathan stepped forward to catch Brox's attention and distract him from Stella. You're good to leave tomorrow morning. The man turned to Nathan, then panned around to scan the rest of the heirs. Yes, I will be. Wonderful to meet you all. I know your parents, impressive adventurers all. I praise the divine that I have this chance to know their heirs. His attention turned back to Nathan, and he smiled charmingly. And you, Nathan Lark, you are not an heir to power, but you hold it regardless. He studied him again carefully. You have no history here. Are you of Davrar or beyond it? What does he know? I'm not sure I want him digging into earth, but he could probably find out if he asked around. Nathan shrugged noncommittally. I haven't been here long, but Gemor is my home now, and Giant's Rest is my enemy. The quester nodded sagely. I understand. Welcome to Davrar. I embrace our time as allies and wish you the blessings of Oltia, or I would if I hadn't killed her sister Quenfi. His smile turned smug and he spun back to Sudriel. When is our patrol ended? She was glancing between him and Nathan with a worried expression. 6 days, though we will be in contact with message. You can all move quickly. Be sure to get back for the battle. Brox nodded, then waved at the heirs. I will see you all at dawn in the courtyard for our patrol. Be prepared for a race. I am off to find Oled for some more company. The quester jerked the door open and vanished, the speed of his movement kicking up a breeze that scattered papers around the room. Everybody watched the open door for a moment to see if the quester was truly gone. Dragon's breath. He's great. With him along we'll make Giant's Rest fart ice. Stella said excitedly. Sudriel shook her head, meeting Nathan and Kachai's worried faces and then looking up to see a harried-looking Lilus approaching. Go, you know your mission, don't die. The heirs left the guildmistress' office as Lilus started going over issues with the process of training newly freed volunteers to fight. Sarah shook herself as if snapping out of a day's spell. Brox is dangerous. Arl looked at her strangely. No, he's just, he trailed off. Dangerous, Nathan and Kachai said together. Arl swallowed and sighed. Yeah, Stella just looked confused. What do you mean? Thank you for listening to the story on KevinAudio.com. Chapter 25 Charged Conversation. Nathan grimaced and opened his mouth, but Kacha interrupted him. Let us speak in our rooms, the wolffolk said, shaking his head slightly at Nathan. Yeah, probably better if this conversation isn't overheard. I'm not even sure what to say. Tell Stella she was under the effect of a powerful social skill. Ask her to be more careful. I'm not sure that's possible. She's supposed to develop a way to resist this eventually, but clearly isn't there yet. The heirs walked through the building in somewhat awkward silence. The two housemate elites that had been tailing them once more broke off to stand outside the door as they reached their rooms. I gotta say, maybe I should protest being guarded around the clock. It just feels awkward, and I'm worried that they might overhear this. At least they won't be coming with us on patrol. Having Brox around is going to be even worse, though. They all sat down. Stella looked around suspiciously, seeing how everybody was focused on her. What, did you all decide to take up hydra farming? All of the heirs looked at each other, nobody wanting to be the first to speak. It felt like an intervention where everybody knew what needed to be said except the person who needed to hear it. Stella, you trust us, right? You trust me, Nathan finally said, meeting her eyes. She blinked at him. Yes. We've stared the ghoul in the eye together, she snorted. A lot, he nodded. What do you think of Brox? Confused by the non sequitur, she answered. He's dragon's breath. It'll be great to go on patrol with him. I want to follow the path he blazes. We could learn so much from him. She broke off, grinning widely. What did you think of Brox before we met him? Nathan asked gently. Stella shrugged. I didn't know him then. He's a quester, so I was apprehensive. But he's on our side beyond the hold of prophecy. Did you hear what he said? The mage lowered her voice, mimicking Brox. I would wish you the blessings of Oltia, or I would if I hadn't killed her. She turned towards Kacha. Seems he's got things to teach you of the divine. Smoke and blood. Sarah's words were bitter, and she rubbed at her forehead in frustration. What? Stella said, turning back to her friends, her forehead creasing with confusion. What's your target? Kacha was about to speak, but Nathan held up a hand. Stella, Brox has a social skill, a powerful one. It makes him seem cool and friendly. You'll want to agree with him on everything. It's that kind of skill. No, that's not true. I would know if that were true. Stella sounded offended, but not entirely sure of herself. Her tone firmed. Brox is on our side. He's here to save us. Trust me just for a moment, Nathan said. He's got a skill that's making you like him. Why would you like him? He implied he wants to fight the dungeon for no reason. Stella still looked unsure. Nathan looked around at the other heirs. We all have mental defense skills. None of us like Brox, right? Arl nodded firmly. Muckgrabber's asshole, that's what he is, said Sarah. Kachai raised up a placating hand. He is a foe to our enemies, but that makes him our ally, not our friend. Nathan turned back to Stella. What did your parents say about Brox? Remember it. Why did they say that? The mage was rubbing at her temples, looking down at the ground. Nathan had a vague sense of pushing at an ephemeral barrier with a limb he didn't have. It was like his control of anti-magic, but somehow orthogonal. It was yet another new sense. He tried to exert control over the feeling and nothing happened. Acting on a hunch, Nathan continued speaking. Trust me and trust yourself. Ask yourself, why do you like Brox? Do you have a reason for it? His words pushed at the intangible barrier, and Nathan could feel it tearing. It's a skill, Stella. Recognize it for what it is. Her face grew strained, teeth gritting. Then she looked up at him, visibly furious. At least Tial's magic didn't lie. Leadership 6 achieved. Kachai released a deep breath of relief before holding up a restraining hand. Hear me, hold yourself still. We need him against Giant's Rest, and his skill would not be able to force you to attack your teammates as Tial's spell did. Stella's eyes sparked and her hands lit on fire. Do we need all of him? Boy, I'm not sure she's wrong here. What he's doing is not only a dick move, but also dangerous. His skill clearly compromises people's judgment, which is not a great thing to do while adventuring. But I'm not sure what to do about it. Should we confront him about it? Ask him to turn it off? Can Stella develop her skill in time? We don't have to accept the shit he's pouring on us, Sarah said. Kachai's lips peeled back from his teeth, but it looked more apprehensive than aggressive. He's a quester. We cannot drip blood in his eyes. Arl had been silent in this conversation, but his face twisted with sudden animus. Maybe we should trap him, demonstrate we could kill him. Stella and Sarah both nodded excitedly. Nathan sucked in a breath. That seems like a terrible idea. It's a great way to die, or at the very least make a powerful enemy where we don't need to. What then? Let him hold this edge without answering it, Stella snarled. Something Feline had said stuck out to Nathan, and he furrowed his brow as he repeated it. He seeks true companions. The rest of the heirs looked at Nathan like he was crazy, but Kachai spoke first. Explain. I think he buys his own story, Nathan said. He's got this whole invincible demigod thing going on, and whenever he walks into a room, people either love him or hate him. But that means he doesn't have friends, just followers. Nobody responded, not sure where he was going. Stella shook her head. This is a dungeon for fools. But Nathan wasn't done positing his theory. What if what he wants are teammates, peers, people who will work with him but also stand up to him? Sarah's frown did not abate. He's a quester. He doesn't seek peers, only glory. We'll repeat the past of our parents with that path. Being a peer is not something offered. Kachai spoke slowly, as if feeling the way forward. We cannot force him to do anything, and threatening him will end in smoke and blood. Then what? Stella asked. She was still pissed, but her hands were no longer literally on fire. Nathan sighed. I don't know. I think he's mostly interested in me. Maybe I can go ask Sudriel to change the patrol so it's just me and him. Not even as a game, Arl said, tone hard. We won't allow you to bait the castle bear for us again. Sarah snorted. You'd leave us behind in levels, further behind. She turned to Stella for a moment, frowning. Stella, you trusted us now to tell you that Brox was influencing you. Trust us again. The mage frowned but didn't say anything. Sarah continued. The skill won't work as well now that you know about it and know how it feels. If it does influence you, we'll protect you. It seems like Nathan and Kachai are entirely protected. She shot them questioning looks, receiving nods in return. They will deal with Brox. Arl and I must spend our class resources to resist, but we can. We'll try to stay farther away from the quester. You should do your best to stay away from him and work on developing your own skills. We protect you on the battlefield, and we can protect you here. Kachai spoke seriously. Until such time as we are his peers. To that aim, we must be as impressive as possible. And not be impressed, Nathan said wryly. He's used to everybody fawning over him and his deeds. Let's not be too taken in by his legend. Sure, he's a quester. He says he's conquered empires and killed gods and whatever. But we took down a city and more than one dungeon. We won't let him walk all over us. Stella still looked upset, but it was less furious and more resigned. Yeah, don't let me mess up my build. She paused, then shook her head. He's going to wake that dungeon, that's clear to us all, right? Arl sighed. Yeah. The heirs spent the rest of the day on various preparations. They ate together, then dispersed to spend some more time with their parents. The guardians were on watch, but Nathan saw Stanel walking Arl and Sarah through some advanced weapon practice atop the wall around Xia's mansion. We really should stop calling it that. This building won't survive if Giant's Rest takes the city back. But not sure what else to call it. Not my problem. Nathan sought out Lilus, remembering that the administrator had a list of magic that needed to be broken around the city. He spent a good portion of the afternoon with her, breaking into magically sealed vaults with her pair of freed elites by his side. Each of the grand homes was crowded with recently freed citizens of Housemint, and they treated Nathan with an awe that he found uncomfortable. There was some tension about what would happen to the contents of the vaults, but Lilus had been prepared. She used the elites and Nathan to be sure that nobody got pushy, handing out itemized lists of the contents as each vault was opened, and the contents carted back to the central mansion. She repeated the same spiel each time. We're all weaving the same color. Some of the value will return to you, but these valuables are to be used against Giant's Rest to ensure our freedom. This didn't placate everybody, but whenever there was disagreement, Lilus simply raised an eyebrow. Do you want to hoard this wealth for yourselves, or share in the wealth we found in Exia's vaults instead? That, plus the presence of Nathan and the elites, was enough to head off any conflicts before they erupted, and they cleared out a mind-numbing amount of wealth from the assorted vaults. Only a small fraction of it was in coinage and precious metals. Most consisted of enchanted items and magical crafting materials. What are you going to use all of it for? Nathan asked, watching an elite carrying a dimensional pouch loaded with enchanting tools and valuable ingredients. Lilus smiled at him. Outfitting our own adventurers and hiring more from Gemor. Mila's got her finger set on starting our own guild, though it'll have the handprint of the Gemor Adventurers Guild. She gauged him, and when he seemed interested, she continued. It'll be a time before Housemate has the crafters and money to do that by itself. It's my blasphemous hope that this treasure will let us create a guild fit to hold a hand against Giant's Rest and safeguard farms in the way that Gemor does. Her tone became grim. It'll need to if this city is to survive. Is Egal starting a school for mages part of that vision? Nathan asked, genuinely curious. Lilus looked over, surprised. Oh, you had a hand in that. It shines light in my eyes that she's agreed. We need mages of our own, like your own tower of trickery. Do you know what she's going to call it? The thin scribe shook her head. She was suggesting the ghosts of Housemate. Name doesn't matter much, does it? Nathan shrugged. Seems fine to me. Where to next? He reconvened with the heirs for dinner, after which they had another more subdued gathering with their parents. The guardians seemed like they wanted to eke out every moment of time with their kids. After dinner, Stella turned to Nathan. To raise the past, can you teach me about plasma? She shook her head. It feels like it's been an age, but that was only weeks ago. Nathan smiled. Sure, thanks for being patient. I hope the other stuff we've been talking about has been interesting. Dallo looked over, his eyebrows raised in surprise. Would you like a more private place to share this insight? Nope, Nathan replied, his faint smile still present. You're welcome to listen in, but keep in mind the benefits of freely sharing information if I ask for insights in the future. Dallo shot a significant glance with his wife, considering the offer. She just scooched over on the couch to wrap an arm around her husband. Hear me, but I'm happy to learn whatever you have to teach. Excellent. I've got the edges of a plan for when things are a little calmer, and some insights from these two will make it a lot easier. It's also an ego boost to have these two excited to learn magic from me. I still remember them dismantling a monster the size of a hill right in front of me. Nathan pursed his lips, thinking for a minute. Dallo, Cullo, before we get started, I want to warn you. Some of what I'm going to talk about depends on things I've taught Stella that you haven't heard before. It also might conflict with your current insights. I don't want to get into a debate about who's right. Your insights work, mine should too. Once I've finished laying them out, you can describe yours if you think Stella needs to hear them. But it's important she not be split between two conflicting methods. Dallo frowned and opened his mouth, but closed it after Cullo gave him a squeeze. Instead, he just nodded. Please proceed. I am curious to learn more about the fuel of this blaze. Nathan turned back to Stella. Right, so you made plasma earlier by making a cage of force, magnetism, and light, and then heating up the inside, right? You wanted to trap all of the energy in a small space, then release it in a targeted way. Rugged. About on target, I wanted to get all of the output of the fire mana, light, heat, hot gas, everything concentrated on one spot, but the gas inside got weird. My air mana couldn't hold it in anymore. Then I started experimenting with it. Nathan pointed a finger at her. Yes, we call that plasma, the fourth state of matter. It's fundamentally different from a solid, a liquid, or a gas, but you make it by superheating a gas. How is it different? Cullo said, frowning. I have noticed this thing. It acts strangely with lightning mana. Yup, Nathan nodded. In normal substances, you have both positive and negative charges bound closely together, so closely that the overall material is neutral. But when you heat a gas hot enough, the charges separate from each other and you're left with a soup of both positive and negative charges floating around. They're both still present, but they can move independently from each other. To set aside these charges, why only a gas? Dalo asked. Can this plasma come from something solid as well? Not usually. Everything transitions from solid to liquid to gas to plasma as it gets hotter. There's a few exceptions. Depending on pressure, you can go straight from solid to gas or from solid to plasma, but you'd have to have an incredibly high pressure for that. Nathan shook his head to avoid getting distracted. Regardless, anything can become plasma if you get it hot enough, but it won't stay that way unless you keep it hot. You can also make it with lightning. The creation of plasma has a lot to do with why lightning is loud. Dalo blinked at him. What? Every time I use a lightning spell I'm creating this plasma, but it does not seem so dangerous then. Well, no more than a normal lightning bolt. Nathan chuckled. Yes. More dangerous things can happen when you make very dense and very hot plasma, like the spell you cast on the grave Tangle. There's a point you can hit where a different kind of reaction starts happening. He locked eyes with Stella. That's a very different level of insight and far more dangerous. Do not keep compressing and heating plasma to see how far you can go. It will explode violently and uncontrollably and convey silent death all around. She pouted slightly, clearly curious what he meant by silent death. High-tier lecturing 3 achieved. He glanced at Dalo. I'm honestly impressed that you survived making a spell that involved that as a component. On Earth, our first tests with that kind of power made a column of fire 10,000 feet tall and a crater a mile and a half across. The island where it happened was poisoned for generations. Stella's eyes lit up at Nathan's words, and Cullel shot him a worried look. Nathan held up a finger in front of Stella. That crater was centered on the place where the compression happened. Don't try it unless you can survive being at the heart of an explosion that would leave a smoking crater where old Gemor stands. Not Gemor. The entire ruin of old Gemor gone. He lowered his finger and turned back to Dalo. Still, it takes an utterly ludicrous amount of power to get there. I have to imagine you had help from Davrar, a skill that makes things easier to burn. Nathan cocked an eyebrow at the old mage. Magical intuition 4 achieved. Dalo frowned unhappily but gave a slow nod. Something like that. This silent death you speak of, I would learn more. I think of it as a malign and invisible energy. Nathan looked between Dalo and Cullel, eyebrows raised. Speaking about it will only make it easier to achieve. Shield yourself whenever you use this magic and heal yourself frequently. That should be enough. I'm pretty sure curing fixes cancers after all, Stella interrupted. You all prophesy the dangers when it's been decided I won't even learn about it. Let's skip over it and talk about plasma. Cullel closed her eyes and bowed her head, giving Nathan a sign to proceed. He shrugged. Right, plasma. It's a mixture of positive and negative charges that are more separate from each other than in any other state of matter. In fact, it's common for the negative charges to fly off since they're so much smaller, leaving you with a plasma that's overall positively charged. Smaller charges, just more of them? Stella asked, looking confused. Nathan shook his head. No, sorry, they've got the same charge, but they're physically smaller and move much faster. We call them electrons. What are the positive charges called? I don't want to go down nuclear theory right now, maybe later, but it's not really necessary for now, and I don't know how easily that insight leads to fission magic or something like that. Protons. But this all touches on a much deeper insight that I don't want to get into and isn't important right now. In a plasma, you have a ton of individual charges floating around. That means 3 important things. Nathan raised 3 fingers. First, the particles affect each other because of the charge. He held up his 2 fists a foot apart. In a normal gas, if this particle moves, nothing happens to this one until they touch. He moved his fists together until they bounced off each other. But in a plasma, the particles will affect each other from a distance, usually repelling one another because they're both positive. He moved one fist towards the other, but this time the second hand moved away from it. Cullo frowned. Are all things made of particles? Mom. Stop interrupting, Stella scolded her. Both of you, I'd trade a grand insight for silence, but yes, everything is particles, particles of what I'd like to know. She gave Nathan a glare. Arl chuckled from the side. Ah, Caxall family arguments. Everybody involved in the conversation turned their ire on the source of the interruption for a moment, and the swordsman quailed before them and raised his hands in surrender. Nathan continued, raising 2 fingers. That has really important implications. It means that even though a plasma acts like air in some ways, it acts like water in others. It can have waves and other group behaviors in a way air doesn't. It's harder to pressurize. Scholars and their interests. Where'd they find a 4th Caxall? Stanel said quietly to Kia from the side. I'm pretty sure he just called me a nerd. But who wouldn't nerd out about using science to do magic? Stella's expression cleared. So it's not just hot air. Nathan chuckled at her phrasing. No. The second point is that you can separate out the charges with an electric field, but it's harder the denser the plasma. If you put a plasma in a strong electric field and then slice it in half, one half will be more positive and the other will be more negative. They'll be really unstable but pack a lot of energy, and the high charge means they'll be easier to move around with electric fields. Do you understand? I think so, Stella said, her brows scrunched up. Earlier I did the containment with magnetic fields. Is that the right idea? Yeah, Nathan nodded. That's a good way to do it, but you also need to prevent any air from touching it. You remember pulling out all of the air from a bubble to make a vacuum when you were working on the light insight, like that. Dallo shot an utterly bewildered look at Cullo, mouthing the word field questioningly. She shrugged in response. Right. Third and last point. Plasma is an incredibly good conductor of lightning electricity. You've already used this. Remember when you destroyed the old Gemor siege constructs, when your lightning followed their beams of light back to the source. That was plasma. Stella looked satisfied. So those light beams were strong enough to make plasma, which was a path for the electricity mana to flow down. You mentioned aiming lightning with light, but I haven't gotten the chance to try it. Yes. We call them electrolasers, but they don't need to make a lot of plasma, just a little bit. Then the electricity will flow and make more. The same thing happens whenever you connect a lightning bolt to something. That's why you can keep channeling it and it mostly follows the same path. But if you control the plasma, it'll help you control the flow of lightning. High-tier lecturing 4 achieved. Stella collapsed back in her chair. I need to try some magic. Nathan smirked. Go ahead. I don't have any other plans. Arl stood. If this is our last night in Housemate, then I do. See you in the morning. Chapter 26 Departures into the Unknown. Nathan spent the next few hours helping Stella apply his lessons on plasma. His better mana senses made the whole process much easier than when he'd been trying to help her gain light mana, and his control over his antimagic helped him snuff the experiments before anything went out of control. Stella had also improved as a mage. Her control was better, and she could more easily construct a spell of several different kinds of mana, which was necessary for these spells. It was looking like effective plasma spells would require fire, lightning, magnetic, and air mana. They found that light mana helped with the containment too. Dallo and Cullo were doing their own experimentation alongside their daughter, but Nathan wasn't paying them as much attention beyond occasionally checking to make sure they weren't doing something stupid. Overall, they seemed much more safety-conscious than their daughter, and Nathan felt confident leaving them to their own devices. After all, they figured out a good deal of this without me. Pretty impressive. Kia and Stanel seemed to be playing some kind of drinking game, they devised a long time ago for whenever Dalo and Cullel started talking about magic. They were teaching the rules to Kacha and Sarah, and it appeared that the game might become a tradition of the heirs as well as the guardians. Over time, it became clear that Stella's class gave her a significant advantage in trying to apply Nathan's insights into the natural world. She was a mage of the natural law, and had skills to boost her magic when it aligned with the principles of the physical world. Those same skills let her know when her experimentation was on the right track, and over the course of the evening she assembled a crude and misshapen mass of a spell that nonetheless was capable of creating and manipulating a vibrating orb of purple plasma with diffuse edges. Nathan watched as Stella tweaked the magnetic containment. Well done. Let's see if you can get a handle on accelerating it with an electric field. Hear me, that spellwork is atrocious, Cullel protested, glancing over from where she was working with a multi-layered orb of force and flame. You can't hit the target with something so inelegant. It's just for experimentation, Stella said absently as she prodded the sphere with different kinds of mana. I need to understand the mana, feel its essential nature, Cullel glared at Nathan. That can't be an effective way to learn. Every spell she makes will bear the scars of this stalker shit spell. Nathan smirked. I disagree. You always need to experiment to learn. Once you understand what you're doing, then it's time to optimize. The best scientific equipment is usually the kind that's kludged together somewhere. If you're using standard equipment and reagents, you're usually not doing something new. Dalo watched the whole conversation with a frown, chewing on his lip without interjecting. He could generate plasma easily, but had never been able to manipulate it much. Stella could. Her expression focused. She started to spin the ball of plasma. Her eyebrows rose in surprise as the edges grew notably brighter than the center, the hazy mass becoming more clearly defined. Nathan stepped up, ready to swallow the spell in anti-magic if it threatened to break free. But the spell was stable and he studied it for a second before making a suggestion. Try putting a magnetic field in the middle so you have a disc with a hole in it. The orb flattened out as it spun further, then the center dented inward to form a torus that wobbled alarmingly. Stella's voice was absent-minded, her focus on managing the spell. A tube with no end. The charges respond better to the magnetic field if they're moving. It's more stable if they're not just sitting there. The vibrating toroid flexed slightly, then adapted a slight spiral around its length. The plasma condensed even farther and brightened, but the faint vibration smoothed out entirely. Stella's mouth was open in astonishment before she shot both hands into the air in triumph. Yes. With her inattention, the spell in front of Stella began to destabilize. Dalo and Cullel started to cast their own magics to control the blast as a puff of sizzling heat escaped. But Nathan beat them to it, swooping in with his aura to wipe the magic away before it filled the room with fire. Stella's parents rounded on her with expressions of annoyance, but before they could say anything she gestured to Nathan with both hands. He's right here, the best safety mechanism for chasing a grand insight. Then she smiled wide and her eyes shining with a distinctive purple glare. It worked too. I got plasma mana, high-tier lecturing 5 achieved. Nathan clapped his hands together and cheered. Dalo and Cullel looked astonished. Everybody else took a shot. After processing for a moment, Dalo looked like he was going to start pulling his hair out. My daughter, be careful of your mana storage. Too many mana types may interfere. That would prophesy a disaster. She smirked at him, refusing to let the mood be brought down. Oh, I didn't mention. We looted a dragon's hoard of prismatic diamond from an Edrani Empire fortress. She reached into one of the dimensional pockets of her robes and pulled out a head-sized chunk of the crystal that had served as the power core of that particular dungeon. It's unnaturally made, but there's about 50 pounds of it. This time, even Stanel and Kia gaped in amazement. Dalo sighed and shrugged, but his face was split in a satisfied smile. Success beyond prophecy. From there, the night degenerated into another party, and Nathan had to convince Stella it wasn't a good idea to try inventing plasma spells while drunk. At least not powerful ones. The heirs woke up bright and early the next morning because Sudriel sent somebody to bring them food. They'd definitely gone to bed later than they should have. Arl had gotten to their rooms slightly before they did, looking smug and freshly bathed. At least the food was good. Stella was still over the moon about her new mana type. I can put it into fireballs, force and fire and plasma. She was practically bouncing off the walls. Nathan was somewhat doubtful she'd slept much at all. I bet it'll be great for giving lightning spells more punch or guiding them, she continued. Or I can combine light and plasma to make the perfect channels for lightning to flow through. Arl shook his head. I am free of regret. My night was excellent entertainment, but it would have been nice to see this insight develop. You missed learning the magic drinking game, Sarah said with a snort. But we can teach you later. We'll need it again, sure and certain. Kachai leaned in. We'd need alcohol for that, but it is righteous to abstain. I do not think I will carry the hoard my mother keeps. Sarah met her brother's eyes, her voice full of mirth. I suppose we'll have to handle it. I hate to break up the party, but we need to go meet Brox, Nathan said, slapping his knees and standing up. He looked around the room to make sure they weren't leaving anything behind. The rest of the heirs deflated and got up to do their last-minute packing. Do you think Brox will still use us as Castlebear bait if we're funny? Arl asked. Everybody looked at Nathan, who shrugged. I get the sense he'd love it if we were entertaining, but I don't know if it'll make him really care about us. Maybe a little. Remember, our main goal is to keep our distance and not be too impressed. He met Stella's eyes. The red-haired mage was suddenly subdued. It'll be fine, he reassured her. Just be conscious of yourself and focus on your mental skills. They left the room, bidding goodbye to the elites on either side of the door. It was Turbang and Datter, who seemed relieved to hear that the heirs wouldn't need to be guarded anymore. I'll go as luck ride with you, Datter said, clasping his hands in a salute. You might need it with your final companion. Good to know that not all of the Housemate elites worship Brox. They were supposed to meet Brox in the courtyard, but he wasn't there. The heirs moved into the garden, which was starting to show some rough edges. It hadn't been totally abandoned, but the manicured greenery was clearly being allowed to slip from absolute perfection. They watched as petitioners and messengers streamed in and out of the mansion, and a group of Housemate citizens did weapon practice under the command of Stainel. Oh yeah, he trains the Gemor Guard. Makes sense he'd start that up for Housemate. Brox did eventually show up, strolling leisurely into the central courtyard from the lower city, yawning and rubbing sleep from his eyes. His eyes locked onto Nathan and his teammates, and with a small gust of wind the quester appeared before them, arms wide and a smile on his face. My friends, let our journey begin. I will allow you to set the pace, but by the oaths of Adas it better not be too slow. He raised his eyebrows and waggled his finger on the last line, then gestured towards the gate. Seems like kidding not really kidding. Kachai nodded mechanically, then turned towards the gate and took off at a jog. The rest of the heirs followed, blowing past the group of trainees. Brox caught up in a moment, running backwards just a bit to the side. Nathan caught Stainel throwing a venomous look towards the quester, but Brox didn't seem to notice or care. Ah, a good effort. Now we shall see how long you can maintain it. I always say, good legs and good lungs are as important as a strong arm, the quester declared, not breathing any differently despite running backwards at a fast pace. They exited the mansion and headed down the broad road that was the quickest way to the east gate. Brox kept on running backwards, dodging around anybody in his path with quick bursts of speed. He wore an indulgent expression as he kept talking. A few hundred years ago I was leading an army out of the city-state of Aflela to fight Kehona over a trade route. We were both racing to the Pass of Lightning. Archery armies desire the high ground, I tell you, he smirked. Verified truth, we got there first. Saria tried to hold us off by herself until her army arrived, but I chased her off and we took the position. She had better archers, but with the high ground it wasn't an even contest. We won that war off legs, not bows. Took her a decade to forgive me for that one. The quester's eyes panned around across the airs, waiting for a response to his story. His social skill was still going, but it didn't seem to be as powerful as before. Either he was reining it in, or it worked better for first impressions. The pace meant they were all breathing intentionally, but not so hard nobody could spare a word. Instead of responding, Nathan and Kachai just met Brox's gaze calmly, while Arl and Sarah were more reserved. Stella was as far from Brox as she could get. The mage's mouth was set in a thin line, and she kept her eyes on the paving stones as Force Mana carried her feet in large swooping steps. After an awkward moment, Nathan agreed. Yeah, that makes sense. Saria's another quester. Has she ever visited Gemor? The quester snorted, dancing between Nathan and Kachai to avoid a man pulling a cart full of fabric up the hill. That's repeating prophecy. She's a quester from my grid, but she never budges from her precious Kahona. Wants to build it up into a new Edrani, a place to survive endings. He shook his head. But that's not what the endings are for. Nathan's eyes sharpened at Brox's words, but the man frowned and changed the topic before Nathan could ask a follow-up. She's an archer like Sarah here. It's good to see Stanel with heirs of his own. Funny to set one on the path of blades and another on the path of bows, though both seem aimed at the same destination. Do you both plan to pursue your father's path? The question was a bit perfunctory, as if the quester didn't really care about the answer. Sarah looked up with a proud smile. We're on the path to power wherever that takes us. I'm blazing my own path towards my own target. Next to her, Arl grunted his agreement. Brox laughed. Good, good. Powerful insights can give great power, but it never pays to copy a path to the bone. He held up one finger like a teacher imparting a great lesson. It always leads to a flawed copy. The best warriors always come from those who follow their own path. An insight you discover will always be yours in ways that cannot be matched by any other. The benevolent smile was back, and Brox gestured around at all of them. I should tell you about the Immortals, a group I knew back in the days where old Gemor stood. Unique fighters all, but linked by a single talent. Nathan and the other heirs listened as Brox told them a few stories, reacting calmly even as the stories grew more and more outrageous. He was a good storyteller. I don't think he's lying or even necessarily stretching the truth. He's been on Davrar for hundreds if not thousands of years and lived through a few endings. I fully believe he's killed gods, though not alone, of course. Stella was trying to stay as far away from Brox as she could and avoided making eye contact with him. However, even over the course of the brief trip through the city, she started warming up to the quester, grinning and laughing at some of his stories. They exited the city, waved out of the gates by a team of adventurers and another pair of Halsmid elites. The terrain before them was rocky and broken, though not barren. Trees and bushes covered the mountains, while a solid and well-built road snaked between farms and towards a broad pass that led to the city of Giant's Rest. Kachai raised a pointing finger, aiming away from the road at a shallow angle. Fireface Pass is that way. By Alita's flaming underpants, so it is. Keep up. I could be there and back before you finished lunch, Brox said, finally turning around and surveying the terrain as they set out at the same jog. Then why don't you? Arl asked, his voice laced with a hint of bite. It'd save us a trip. The quester spun back, throwing his arms wide. Ah, because I wish to know you, he waggled his finger. Can't do all the labor, else you will be incapable when I leave. Then Brox's expression grew more serious. Such a trip would tire me, even if only a sliver. If I should meet Badad out there with a team to support him, Then this war could be over before it's even begun. Badud was always a wily one. I could see him reading the board and laying this trap here. Besides, the duty is to keep watch, and I need to sleep. The heirs looked around at one another, faces grim. Brox picked up on it. Oh, do you think to question prophecy? Will you abandon your duty if it means facing a quester? His tone was vaguely mocking, holding a sliver of disappointment. Nathan snorted. Nope, just want a rematch. He didn't fight fair the first time. The quester's eyebrows rose. Tell me. Nathan pursed his lips, trying to decide how much detail to share. There was this archmage of Giant's Rest, Tldho Droxal, student of Badud's, I think. TL had a hard-on for capturing me. We spanked him the first time he tried ambushing us. Then he woke up an old Gemor fortress foundry and waited for us to come and deal with it. Brox interrupted, his eyes shadowed. I knew the fortress foundries were a bad idea, but Gemor loved their constructs. They did make them feel safe. He refocused on Nathan. You took one down. We defeated the army with lightning and steel, Kachai said seriously, to save the village of Taran, then joined with others to destroy the foundry. Lightning? Brox glanced at Stella, whose eyes sparked in response. He dipped his head. I see. Nathan broke in before Stella could respond. TL ambushed us after we fought all day taking down the fortress foundry, but he still wasn't confident, so he brought Badud along. Flying, invisible. Used soporific bubble to knock the others out, then levitated and teleported my friends away. That's what started this whole mess. He waved back at Housemint. So I killed TL, freed the elites, and killed a bunch of mages. Exia got away, though she left an arm behind. The quester waggled a finger at Nathan like a disappointed teacher. Bad idea that. No better path to rivalry. But do you aim to rival this silly archmage or the quester? The question was said probingly, as if Brox was daring Nathan to take up a thrown gauntlet. Nathan met Brox's eyes. I'd love to topple their academy, kill Badud and all his pet archmages. Pretty damn sure they all deserve it. The quester nodded slowly. Good, excellent. His mouth spread into a contented grin. A worthy companion. He glanced around at the rest of the heirs. Do you share Nathan's fire? You are his team. Gemor swears the adventurer's oath, and you swore with him. Will you fight by his side until his quest is done? The quester's gaze sharpened. Once the god of oaths was Ada's. Now he is slain, and only his fragments enforce what is sworn, without the wisdom of the eldest of the divine. Only the letter of a vow matters these days, not its spirit. Man, this guy knows things way beyond anybody in Gemor. The stuff he could teach us, if only he felt like it. Kachai's attention was laser-focused now that Brox was talking about gods, but the quester gestured around to the heirs instead of continuing. Tell me about yourselves. You're the heirs of the most powerful adventurers in Gemor, but what of your parents do you want to keep? How will you grow beyond them? Chapter 27, Uncomfortable Patrols. Kachai growled with frustration at Brox's question. Our parents shaped our paths, as is true for all, but we are not defined by them. We seek goals beyond Gemor. The wolfman's voice was low and guttural. As he continued, his words started reverberating in the way that happened whenever the divine Justicar prayed or otherwise invoked his shard of divinity. You launch questions as from a bow, doubting our dedication. But what of your own? You come to fight Giant's Rest, to engage in righteous battle against our oppressors. Kachai stepped towards Brox, intangible power rippling off him as if from a hot stove. He stood defiantly before the quester. Will you fight with all you have? Or is this as a game to you? Are you here as a master of the mountain to dispense wisdom and leap from the mountaintop when it suits you? The air itself vibrated with Kachai's question, and it felt like he'd woken a force larger than any magic or monster. Divine mana emerged from the fabric of Davrar itself, spilling forth around the heirs and waiting to judge the quester's next words. It felt expectant. What is going on? Divine mana has emotions, but it's usually simple. This feels like more. Like the mana has been summoned and waits to pass judgment. Brox laughed, long and loud. It was the deep belly laugh of a man finding something truly unexpected but completely welcome. The divine pressure intensified in response, unhappy at being mocked. The feeling was oppressive, like being crushed by a giant. But it was also fragile, as if the giant was pressing on them with a sheet of thin plastic that would soon rip. The questor's face calmed, and he addressed Kachai seriously with a ritualistic cadence. By Damon's hammer, I will fight Bada to the death in this battle. He has earned his end 300 times in 3. I am committed to your cause in spirit, heart, and blade. His hands moved from his forehead to his chest, and finally to the hilts of his swords as he spoke. The words resonated with the power surrounding them, and Nathan shivered as more divine mana came into being, slipping out of the fabric of the world. It seemed drawn by the questor's words, and there was a vast sense of approval. Nathan pulled in his aura as tightly as he could, trying very hard not to disrupt the developing ritual. More and more divine mana permeated the air, until there was enough present to vaporize the ground for 100 feet in every direction, if it decided it was the right thing to do. Nowhere was the mana denser than where it manifested around Koch as a blazing golden aura, especially in a halo around his head. He stared with a shocked expression at Brox, clearly unsure how to handle the ocean of power that only theoretically answered to him. We've started a ritual of some kind, and the mana is waiting for the next part. But Kacha doesn't know what to do. He's a priest without a holy book, a man operating heavy weaponry without a manual. Magical intuition 5 achieved. Brox wore a sad smile on his face, and he spoke quietly to Koch, giving instruction. This ritual isn't a working of Kali's. The feeling is more important than the words. You need to bless the war that is to come. Vow on the principles of Damon that all present shall dedicate themselves to righteous combat because it is necessary to prevent greater harm. The power grew even denser, tendrils of divine mana sparking in the air like impatient eels. But Kachai didn't immediately follow Brox's direction, instead thinking deeply for a moment. After several seconds of intensifying pressure, the wolfman spoke. His voice thrummed with power, and the divine mana quivered audibly, becoming visible as rippling waves in the air. This war will be a righteous one. As comrades we shall be victorious through worthy battle, and we will cast down the evil of our foes. With our virtue we shall crush our foes on the field, for that is the proper way to face the enemy. With his magical sense, Nathan could feel the shard of divinity inside his friend resonate in tune with the dense field of mana that surrounded them. The divine power radiated a sense of satisfaction and benevolent pride before allowing the wolfman to take control of it. Kachai flexed his hands as he mastered the power with hands beyond the physical. He trembled, simultaneously resolute and fragile in the face of so much energy. By my power, the worthy will be blessed. Brox seemed a bit surprised at the exact wording of Kachai's invocation, but he simply closed his eyes and accepted the divine mana as it sank into his bones. The questor almost seemed to be luxuriating in the sensation. The blessing of Damon, it's been an age since I've felt it. He snorted and cracked an eye at Kachai. Though it isn't truly a blessing of Damon, is it? Magical Perception 7 achieved. Meanwhile, Nathan was fighting a losing battle. He was trying to pull his anti-magic back to expose himself for the blessing. But it didn't want to stick, and it wasn't just Nathan's anti-magic. A sense of resolute strength spread through Nathan wherever the divine power touched him, but then it recoiled away. Am I too inherently anti-magic for this? Or does the divinity disapprove of what I've done to fight Giant's Rest? Or is it Kachai, consciously or subconsciously judging me unworthy of his blessing? Each of the heirs let out a sigh of relief as the magic settled into them, but Nathan only felt frustration as the blessing dissipated. Brox gave him a lopsided smile, seeming to detect his distress. Your talent's a vault of solace, but such a thing has its drawbacks. The quester breathed out deeply, a more peaceful expression on his face than at any other time Nathan had seen. A divine miracle with no god involved, just a young cleric following a new path. I'd thought the wonders of the divine forever lost. The quester's eyes opened, and his gaze panned to Stella, Arl, and Sarah. It was my desire to accompany Nathan, and his team was incidental. But if this is the path of your healer, I look forward to learning what flame burns inside each of you. Stella's expression brightened, but both Sarah and Arl's eyebrows drew down in identical frowns. The quester rolled his eyes. Trust my word, your insights are safe. I enjoy meeting warriors who blaze their own paths, and that describes all of you. He spun back to Nathan with an intense grin. A worthy team to slay a giant. They camped within sight of the pass, having mostly avoided further intense conversation. Stella had let slip that she had 8 different mana types, but the other heirs had quickly changed the topic and Brox let it drop with a patronizing smile. Nathan had been wondering if the quester was going to camp with them. With his speed, he could probably run back to Housemate to sleep in a nice bed before returning in the morning. Or he could do whatever questers did to travel huge distances. But the man just set up a small and heavily enchanted tent that faded into the background. That thing's almost as heavily enchanted as the Collie's tower that nearly turned me into a goat. Bigger inside, feels almost indestructible. I should probably stay away unless I want a very angry quester. But I could probably pick up a few insights breaking down the magic inside. Setting up camp was a more involved affair than it had been previously. They'd lost some of their gear when Badad had kidnapped them, and Nathan had broken several enchantments to give himself enough stamina to run to Housemate in a single day. They'd replaced some of the gear and gotten some replacements from the Guardians, but Arl was going to have to cook with a non-magical cooking pot, which means I might have to finally do dishes for once. Boo. Brox answered the questioning glances shot his way as they divided up chores. Act as if I wasn't present. I'll manage myself, but I desire to see you adventure. Arl sent a confused look his way. What does that mean? The quester rolled his eyes and spoke slowly as if to a young child. I want to know how you act in all ways. Still an ass, just a complicated one, with a fancy magic tent. At least it's camouflaged. They ascended the rest of the way up the pass the next day, finding the narrowest point of the pass and the Fortress of the Face. The fortresses were relatively common across Davrar, though less was known about their origins than most dungeons. They invariably consisted of an enormous human face carved into a mountain or cliff, with eyes, nostrils, and mouth providing access to the structure inside. Usually there was a road built up into the mouth, and you'd have to fly into any of the other entrances. The faces covered the entire range of humanity, from babies to bearded ancients, from beautiful to ugly. Each one held a single powerful enchantment that spanned the entire fortification. The only purpose of that enchantment was to draw in and saturate the insides with an immense amount of a single kind of mana. The running theory in the Adventurers Guild was that whatever society had built them used an insight that let people gain a mana type by spending time in an environment saturated with that mana. Unfortunately, no clues as to their builders remained. Instead, each Fortress of the Face was usually inhabited by something drawn to the strong magic. Sometimes it was a monster, or a colony of them, that absorbed the free mana and gained corresponding abilities. Other times it was something stranger, like a mobile and aggressive forest, or intelligent elementals. During training, the heirs had heard about one Fortress of the Face inhabited by replicating, floating halberds. Nathan surveyed the pass, examining the 500-foot-tall face of a beautiful woman carved out of the mountain. Sculpted hair framed a strong nose and delicate cheekbones, while enormous gouts of yellow-red flame surged into the sky from each eye. The roar of flame was audible from even this distance, and the open mouth rippled with forge heat escaping between plump lips. The pass was scorched for hundreds of feet in all directions of the fortress. Brox walked up next to him, looking out at the pass and the magic show on the other side. "Now that's a deed for the making, isn't it?" Nathan grimaced, his eyes playing over the rest of the broad pass below them. "It's impressive, but we're just here to prevent anybody from Giant's Rest getting through. If anything, it'll help cordon off that side of the pass. I doubt the mages want to get any closer than I do." The quester just shook his head and sighed in exasperation at Nathan's lack of bravado. They'd climbed partway up the steep slope across from the Fortress of the Face, where Stella was working to flatten a portion of the mountainside to pitch their camp. It was hidden from the ground below by the slope, but you could easily look out over the pass from the ledge without being silhouetted against the sky. Nathan turned to address the quester as they watched Stella use her earth magic to make a ledge that would serve as a vantage point. "Who built the fortresses of the Face? What were they for? Join me in vanquishing it and I'll give you a hint." Brox reached out and capped Nathan on the shoulder, chuckling. The force of his presence redoubled, and Nathan felt like he was sitting next to a blazing beacon of authority and influence. Rolling his eyes, Nathan sat on the ground. "Not a good enough reward. That place looks like it's incredibly hazardous to even approach. It also offers no real danger to housemen. Their records said it was passive, and I don't want to change that." There was a pregnant pause, then Brox's muscled form settled down close beside Nathan. "The challenge of its existence is not reason enough." "Nope. It's an unnecessary risk," Nathan replied. "It's not like there's a shortage of necessary dangers for adventurers to level from. If we went around challenging every dungeon, Gemor would be wiped out within the decade. Surely the heirs are enough to conquer this dungeon quickly and without danger." Brox's tone was teasing, seemingly trying to challenge Nathan's pride. For a moment Nathan wanted to agree to the plan to impress Brox with his abilities. His anti-magic probably could neutralize whatever was in there. Maybe, maybe not. And even if we beat whatever's inside, there still might be fallout for housemen and for our mission of preventing anybody from getting through. He reined in the impulse, deciding it wasn't worth responding to the quester's comment. Mental Fortress 4 achieved. After a moment of silence, Brox picked the conversation back up, his voice serious and faintly contemptuous. "If you are so focused on avoiding risk, why do you not teach your anti-magic? It surprised me to learn that you were not spreading that insight. It is such an edge to hold against Giant's Rest. It would also aid with such dungeons." He gestured across the pass towards the magical fire streaming into the sky. Nathan pursed his lips, trying to decide how to answer, but Brox wasn't done. "The way Gemor hoards insights, it is a prophecy of both power and death. Gemor adventurers have so many different paths, no foe can triumph over them all. More insights are discovered here than in the halls of the Conclave. But the cost is that few of those insights spread and many are lost entirely." The quester finally turned to regard Nathan, his gaze curious. "You do not strike me as a hoarder of insights. Why do you not spread such power to defy your foes? By Ada's, do me the favor of answering with verified truth." Nathan clicked his tongue while he thought. "I can't teach it," he shrugged, turning to meet the purple eyes weighing him. "I don't know how to replicate the conditions that gave me the talent. There wasn't much of an insight involved. It was dependent on external factors outside of my control." Brox didn't answer for a long moment, his brow furrowed in thought. "There is always a way to spread an insight. Can you remember the exact words of Davrar when you were granted the talent?" "Yes." Nathan reached back with his memory skill, recalling one of the first messages he'd ever gotten after his abduction from Earth. "Your body has no magic inside it, and magic-resistant alchemical ingredients permeate your bones and brain, making you difficult to affect with magic." He didn't share it with his companion, simply ruminating on the meaning of the sentence. I've been focused on the magic-resistant alchemical ingredients. I haven't found or heard of any alchemy ingredients known to resist magic. But the other half of the message was that my body has no magic inside of it. That's something I can now replicate. I just need to saturate somebody in my aura for a while. Brox let the silence stretch as Nathan considered the idea, seemingly content to wait. Eventually, Nathan shrugged. I might be able to do it halfway. The questor's eyebrows rose, looking pleased. What tier was the talent when you first gained it? High tier. Now Brox definitely looked smug, and he nodded as if accepting praise. Then you can convey the talent at mid or low tier. Experimentation would be advised. He trailed off as he saw Nathan's expression. I really can teach my anti-magic. That might be more important than this patrol. Nathan rocked back, blown away by the realization. He darted a look backwards where the heirs were setting up camp and chatting amongst themselves. Kachai was watching Brox and Nathan talk. Something about Nathan's expression alarmed the wolfman, and he approached, studying Nathan and casting a wary glance at the questor. What occurs? Brox tilted his head, indicating that Nathan should speak. I think I know how to pass on my anti-magic talent. Kachai's eyebrows rose quickly. Clear as polished gems. Nathan nodded back minutely. Should we go back to Housemate? There are a bunch of freed slaves training to fight Giant's Rest who could probably use the talent, even if I can only teach it at low or mid-tier. Brock scoffed. By the oaths of Adas, we were given this mission and we shall complete it. Sudriel demands no less. He spoke with a faintly mocking expression. Besides, a worthy dungeon is right there, he gestured. Not part of the plan, Nathan said, rolling his eyes once more. He waved over the rest of the heirs, and they approached the edge of the overlook. Brox gave out an irritated growl but didn't speak up as Stella approached. Giant's Rest, the mage said as she examined the pass below. Nathan shook his head. Nope, something Brox said. I think I can pass on anti-magic now. Do you think it's worth going back to Housemate to teach the talent to the volunteers? Brox's eyes narrowed, seemingly frustrated his opinion hadn't automatically carried the discussion. Stella glanced at him, anxiety clear in her voice. Stay. Brox gave a minute nod of approval. Stay, damn it. Arl nodded along. Can your talent be learned so quickly? These volunteers won't weigh the scales of the upcoming battle much. This will be a battle of giants. Fresh trainees will be like goats to a castle bear. We would destroy the future for nothing. It means the talent won't be lost, Nathan said quietly. Brox huffed out a breath and shook his head. He stood from his spot next to Nathan. Plan for victory, not defeat. Should you fall, Housemate will too. You will destroy Giant's Rest with your own hands, not with your students. He said the last word like it was a curse. I suppose Brox doesn't like teaching. We have message, ask Sudriel. Sarah's voice was patient. She tapped Stella on the shoulder. That's your target. The maid shook herself, giving Brox another glance. Yeah, okay, I'll ask. She walked away to the other side of the camp, as far as she could get from Brox while still staying on the flat ground of their campsite. Brox cracked his neck from side to side as he watched the mage before turning his gaze back to Sarah. By solace, you don't have much trust. He radiated disappointment like an almost physical force, the aura prompting everybody around him that it was their duty to address his concerns. The siblings shared a glance and stepped back a few paces, minute expressions conveying complex thoughts. After a moment, Sarah responded. Sudriel sees light we cannot. She'll decide if there's another team that can replace us. She clenched her jaw thereafter, avoiding saying anything more. HMPH, Brox grunted, his skill continuing at full blast. Sweat beaded on Sarah and Arl's foreheads, and Stella shot a worried look across the campsite but snapped her head away quickly. Patience is part of a virtuous battle. We will meet the army when it comes. Kachai's hand settled companionably on Brox's shoulder, and the golden blessing within them both flared. That is our true task. The pressure of the skill faded as Brox smiled back at the wolfman. Yes, it is, he shrugged apologetically. Pardon my zeal. Kache nodded his head slightly, dispensing forgiveness. What's all that about? It wasn't manipulation, more like a priest talking to somebody in his flock. Stella walked delicately back across the clearing, trying to make herself as small as possible. No teams available. That might change if somebody comes back from a scouting mission early, but we're to hold here for now. She seemed ready to hunker down if Brock shot so much as a frown in her direction. Nathan sighed. Now that he'd had a second chance to think about it, he realized he also would need to teach the regeneration, insight to any would-be antimages. They couldn't be healed magically after all. So we stay. The quester sounded a bit resigned, but no longer annoyed. After nightfall, Nathan was scrubbing the cookpot in the dark. He just had a bit of water splashed in from a dimensional bag, a rag and a scrap of soap. He could barely see the grease he needed to get out. He managed not to complain. It was definitely time he did dishes, and light would make their hidden campsite obvious. Dinner had been delicious. Brox had gone and caught some nindine, effortlessly grabbing one of the oldest members of a far-off herd. He'd quickly and efficiently prepared steaks from the magical gazelle-like creature, explaining the ones most steeped in magic had the most tender meat because of their reliance on magic for movement. They also can fly at arrow-like speeds and stab you with sharpened horns. Learned that one the hard way. The meat had certainly been saturated with air magic, and it had been a weird sensation for Nathan to taste the meat with more than a single sense and digest it in two ways. Now Katja and Arl were talking quietly as Stella practiced with tiny amounts of plasma mana, occasionally asking Nathan a question that he answered in low tones. She seemed to be close to implementing a tube-shaped mirror that would let her make a laser, but it wasn't quite a finished spell. Brock sat cross-legged on a blanket behind them. He hadn't moved a muscle since dinner, and Nathan wasn't sure if he was meditating, asleep, or had taken Kachai's invocation of patience to heart. It's really hard to make a good mirror with my magic, but reflecting light mana is easier. Do you think I can try to make the plasma emit light mana instead of just light, then bounce that back and forth to stimulate the plasma to release even more light? Stella asked, frowning at an awkward spell construct in her hands that occasionally flashed a reddish light into the stones at their feet. Nathan considered the question. Maybe. Sounds like the hard part of that idea is to make the plasma generate light mana instead of magical light, then have that feedback. Maybe if you use your class skill to blur the line between magic and nature, you can get something that's still magical enough to work with. Stella considered the spell a bit more, tweaking the construct. She opened her mouth to suggest another idea. Movement. Sarah's voice was low, but its sharpness carried across the camp. Group of 20 moving through the pass.